The stupidest people in America work for Donald Trump's administration. That's not hyperbole. It's not cruelty. It's just the damned truth. And even Trump, in whatever flickering corner of self-awareness he has left, is starting to notice. Because after Kristi Noem waddled onto Meet the Press this morning and basically confessed to her own criminality on national television, our petulant, panicked toddler-in-chief did exactly what he always does. He sprinted to Truth Social to melt down and try to save himself. A full, sloppy collapse, and we're going to get into all of it. But before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video, and if you haven't already and you enjoy our channel, hit that subscribe button because it goes a long way in supporting our work. Now, before we get into Noem's implosion and Trump's unhinged tantrum, I want to start with someone calling both of them out. Jasmine Crockett putting a dagger straight through Trump's immigration agenda.
I think he is trying to do what he's always done, which is instill fear. He wants people to go into the shadows. He wants people to hide out. The way that they're doing right now, people are not sending their kids to school. They're not showing up to work. He is wanting people to be terrified, and he only wants his kind of people on the streets. He wants everyone else to kind of languish in the shadows. But we can start with the fact that he's married a couple of immigrants himself, and we can start there if we about to start denaturalizing. I'm just saying. I just want to be clear. This is the party that says that, they care so much about life until life actually shows up at their front door. And this is also the party that supposedly is about Christianity. And I just imagine what they would have done to a little baby Jesus. But that's a whole other issue. It is really so heartbreaking. We know that under the prior Trump administration, it was the children in cages. So for me, expecting them to do better by children was not one of the things that was on my bingo card. I never expected them to do better. I expected them to do worse. And frankly, that is what they have done with this entire administration, is they have made everything worse. Like, it was bad the first time, so bad that he got kicked out of office. And then, unfortunately, America got amnesia, and somehow he ended up back in office. And now he is literally terrorizing everyone, from children that are born in this country to children that aren't born in this country to adults. It is really sickening. And if we are really going to get back to where we are truly great in this country, it is going to take really looking at your neighbors and seeing their humanity. He was able to dehumanize people during the election, whether it was trans folk or whether it was the immigrant. He dehumanized. And if you study anything about the Nazis, that is where it all starts, is the dehumanization. And none of us should be sitting by, even if we're not trans, even if we're not an immigrant. You have to understand that the dehumanization will come in for black folk. It will come in for women. It will come in for everyone. And that is why we unfortunately got here.
The cruelty is the point for Donald Trump. We've all known that. We saw it when Russ Vought bragged in Project 2025 about wanting to traumatize federal workers, not reform government, not streamline it, but terrorize the people who actually keep the lights on. But it's never just federal workers. Trump wants to fundamentally warp how Americans think their own government should function, not as something that expands public goods, feeds people, houses people, or helps them when they're sick. No, in Trump's twisted little world, government exists to shovel billions to billionaires and grind everyone else into dust. That's the worldview he wants you to swallow. The problem for him is reality. Donald Trump and his band of wannabe autocrats are still bound by actual law, no matter how desperately he wants you to believe he's an unchecked dictator stomping around the country with absolute power. And one of those laws, Kristi Noem just blurted out on live television that she broke it, flat out admitted it, which is why Donald Trump had to scramble into a meltdown post to try and clean up her mess.
Secretary Noem, let me turn to my final topic. In a filing in federal court this week, the Justice Department said that when the administration was ordered back in March to stop sending detained migrants to a mega prison in El Salvador, you personally made the final call to continue the flights anyway. Is that correct? Do you acknowledge that?
you know, we have court filings going on and decisions that are going forward. I'll let them continue to play through that process.
But did you make that call?
I'm proud of President Trump and his leadership and the decisions that we have made. And the decisions that are made on deportations, where flights go and when they go, are my decision at the Department of Homeland Security. And we will continue to do the right thing and ensure that dangerous criminals are removed.
So that you're saying that it was your decision. It sounds like the judge wanted to ensure that people were given due process. He said very clearly, quote, any plane containing these folks that is going to take off or is in the air needs to be returned to the United States. But those people need to be returned to the United States. However that's accomplished, I leave to you. But this is something that you need to make sure is complied with immediately. Did you defy the court's order, Madam Secretary?
No, Kristen, and that's one of the things that we continue to face across this country is activist judges.
And after that disaster of an interview with Noem, Tim Miller over at the Bulwark fired off. See you in court, Secretary. And Tim's right, dead right. These people are out here confessing to crimes in broad daylight, whether it's because they're too dim to understand what they're saying or they simply don't care. Either way, they're admitting it. And Donald Trump, in that mushy little lizard brain of his, knows exactly what's happening. He also knows the political winds have shifted on immigration. I saw a Republican strategist say something I never thought I'd hear. This is the first time in Trump's political career that his immigration shtick is a net negative. The first time. That's how bad it's gotten for him. So, of course, he sprints to Truth Social, like a raccoon to a trash can, and posts this meltdown. Crooked Joe Biden, Mayorkas, and so-called border czar Claw Harris really screwed our country by letting anyone and everyone come in totally unchecked and unvetted. Classic Trump, crank up the racism, crank up the fear, try to scare suburban voters into forgetting the truth, but it's not working. Because not only is his immigration agenda collapsing under its own weight, he's blaming Joe Biden for the National Guardsman shooting when the alleged assailant was granted asylum by the Trump administration in April. Kristi Noem got confronted with that on air, and she couldn't spin it, couldn't deny it, couldn't fake her way through it. She just sat there, stuck with the facts. So what does Trump have to offer after that? Nothing except panic. Nothing except the sweaty, frantic posting of a man who knows the consequences are coming, and someone making that unmistakably clear is Senator Chris Van Hollen, who didn't just call out Trump, he put Kristi Noem on notice too, right here.
This is a desperate attempt of the Trump administration to blame everybody else in the world and not accept any accountability. As you pointed out in your interview with the secretary, it was the Trump administration that was last in time when it came to vetting. And I can tell you that they come before Capitol Hill, Secretary of Homeland Security, FBI director, and they tell us how they've improved the vetting processes. And now they're trying to blame everything on the Biden administration. This is a president who refuses to take accountability for anything.
It was also interesting that she said that he was radicalized here in the United States. So how do you vet if the radicalization happens here, it didn't happen in Afghanistan?
Well, that's a very good point. And she talked about, not talking with foreign governments. Of course, this is a person who worked with the CIA
for years.
For years. So the reality is that we really don't know what motivated him to take this particular act. We should, of course, always review our vetting procedures, but it's not clear, based on their own vetting, that you could have picked something up in this case.
You were a big advocate. I mean, a lot of people were, both parties, for bringing the Afghan citizens who worked with the United States during the War on Terror to the United States once the Taliban took over. Do you now have concerns that this might not have been a one-off, that there have been gaps in vetting and that there could be, more problems?
Well, we should always review our vetting, but in this case, there's no evidence that there was something that escaped the vetting. As you just said, as the secretary indicated, he might have been radicalized here. If that's the case, again, the most recent in-time vetting was by the Trump administration. But, John, I do think it is outrageous and unfair to try to punish an entire class of people for the evil acts of one person. That is collective punishment. These are individuals who worked side by side with America in the fight against the Taliban. And if they were sent back now, the Taliban may likely kill them.
Might execute them.
And
Maryland is among the top 10 states in the country.
That's right. That's right.
With these Afghan citizens,
Yeah. I think this is just a desperate attempt by the Trump administration to blame others. And I will say, John, I think it's important to remember that General John Kelly told us that President Trump told him that Trump had thought that members of our military were suckers and losers. And I see the president's mindset toward our National Guard and military, suggesting that they're political pawns of his and that they owe allegiance to him and not to the Constitution of the United States.
So let me ask you about that Washington Post report on the attack on that Venezuelan alleged drug boat. What do you make of what happened there? Do you think there was a war crime committed?
Oh, I think it's very possible there was a war crime committed. Of course, for it to be a war crime, you have to accept the Trump administration's whole construct here.
That we're at war.
Which is we're in armed conflict at war with the drug gangs. Of course, they've never presented the public with the information they've got here. But it could be worse than that, right? If that theory is wrong, then it's plain murder.
The first strike is murder in that case.
That's correct.
You're alleging.
That's correct. Well, I'm saying that it's either murder from the first strike if their whole theory is wrong, and I think the weight of the legal opinion here is that they've concocted this ridiculous legal theory. But even if you accept their legal theory, that it is a war crime, and so I do believe that the Secretary of Defense should be held accountable for giving those kind of orders.
And this is happening as, of course, you have the Secretary of Defense also saying that he wants to bring Senator Mark Kelly back to active duty to put him before a court-martial for telling members of the military they shouldn't follow illegal orders. Let me ask you, if that happens,